CenterPoint Energy may have to pay back hundreds of millions of dollars. That's if the Texas Senate gets their way. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is asking the company to pay back the $800 million they spent on generators that were never used in recent storms. KLTV7's Michael Richardson has more tonight on exactly what unfolded during a special Senate hearing, and he also tells us what comes next.
They made a bad business decision. They need to pay for it.
After Hurricane Beryl, which left a trail of destruction through deep East Texas, the state Senate is demanding answers. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick says Houston-based energy company CenterPoint leased large generators they did not need and profited $30 million off of them. That's at customers' expense.
They went around a law, I believe, purposefully. For whatever their reasons were. They were wrong reasons if they were business and wrong reasons if it was for profit.
Senate Bill 1075 and House Bill 1500 from the 88th Texas legislature created the ability for utility companies to lease generators in emergency situations. In contrast to CenterPoint, Patrick praised Encore for using mobile generators.
Encore did the right thing. They spent about $5 million buying or leasing, rather, small generators. And CenterPoint spent $800 million, almost $1 billion, on massive generators that were not mobile.
In a statement, Patrick says he will write a letter to the Texas Public Utilities Commission urging them to revoke their decision to grant CenterPoint's request for ratepayers to pay that $800 million. We reached out to CenterPoint this morning. They did not respond in time to a request for comment. Michael Richardson, KLTV7 News.
Other southern states covered by CenterPoint Energy include Louisiana and Mississippi. In the weeks and months following severe